Will it be the spiritual? Will it be the physical? We have to get clear on what we will live for. Is it going to be an abundance of possessions that I'm going to store up and gather? Or is it going to be an abundance towards God? Are we going to be generous towards God? What will we live for? And now we get to the parable. All right, 16 to 19. And he told them this parable, all right? The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. All right, so far, in my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong. Right? Like he has a harvest, like God has blessed him, he's got an abundant harvest, and he sits back and he goes, all right, what am I going to do with it? Like, how am I going to spend it? How should I spend it? What should happen with it? Where should it go? How should it all be divvied up? I don't think there's anything wrong so far. Right? We do that, like we get a paycheck and we're like, okay, where is it going to go? Or we land a sweet business deal and we're like, okay, how is it all going to go? There's nothing wrong with that yet. Right? Then it takes a turn for the worse though. I have no place to store my crops. And he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and I will build bigger ones. And I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. You know what's striking to me? He never thinks about anybody else. He never thinks about anybody else. In fact, point number 2, get clear on who you will give to. He never thinks about anybody else but himself. He's not like, you know what, my neighbor needs this, my friends need this, the community that I'm in needs me to help them with this, or I can give crops to somebody else. Like, he's all about himself. He never thinks about God. Like, at least the story, the parable doesn't specify that. He's like, you know what, there's no talk about God's blessing. There's no talk about that it's all the Lord's, everything, the earth is the Lord's and the abundance thereof. He doesn't realize that it's from God. It's all about him. It's all about what he can do. It's all about, I have the food, the money, the land. What am I going to do with it? The personal pronoun I, me, myself is used 11 times. Like he's so focused on him, and greed is more for me at all costs. He's so focused on himself that he tears down his perfectly good barns and he builds brand new ones. There's nothing wrong. Why can't you just put an addition on? Like, why do you got to tear the whole thing down and build complete new barns? That's how focused on himself he is. Jesus commands us to beware of all kinds of greed. So this morning I thought the best thing that I can maybe do to judge where like our greedometer is, okay? You have a greedometer. Don't laugh. You have a greedometer, all right? I just want to ask you a couple questions. I have 6 questions, right? And I don't want to just stand up here and be like, you're all greedy. I don't know your heart, but these questions will get right to the heart of greed. All right, so they're not in your notes, but if you want to write them down, if there's one that particularly hits you, that's great. But just 6 questions about greed, and just kind of judge, are you being generous towards God and others, or are you being generous only towards yourself? All right, get clear on who you will give to. All right, question number 1. Am I seeing the needs around me? Am I seeing the needs around me? That's straight from the text. The guy doesn't see any of the needs that are around him. Like, you've been in those conversations, right, where like you're just having a casual conversation and someone's like, you know what, we really need, like we're looking for a car and we can't really afford it, or we're looking for a place to stay and we're not really sure. Like that's a need. Like, do you even see that? Does that register that, hey, maybe I can meet that need? Even if they're not asking. Like, are you just seeing needs? Are you praying through needs? Are you able to kind of go through in your head, like, how could I meet that need? Maybe they should be hooked up with another person that can meet that need. But if we're not even seeing the need, if we're like, we go home, well, how's Sue and Joe? Oh, fine, they look for a house. Like, that's not what they said. They said we can't find a house and we're looking for one, we can't afford it, you know? Are you seeing the needs around you? Praying through those, considering meeting those, helping out. How can I meet those needs? Number 2, am I sharing what I have? It's not all about giving all the time. You don't have to give something away all the time. Are you sharing your house? Are you sharing your car? Like this past summer, my Blazer, kaput, done for good. And someone in our church tossed me the keys of their minivan and said, drive it till you find a car. He didn't give it to me, but he's like, here, like, what's mine is yours. God gave it to me. Feel free to use it. He shared with me. And he wasn't like, didn't go over it with a fine-tooth comb when I returned, like the scratches and the crumbs that Micah left and all this other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, he was generous. He's like, here's the keys. Like, go for it. When you find a car, give it back. Are we sharing what we have? Are we willing to do that? Here's a big one for pastors, and I'll just be completely transparent. Information and knowledge. Like in our world, we're like, it's my sermon. Like, I don't want to share it with anybody. It's my understanding. It's my knowledge. I went to seminary for 4 years for this stuff. I'm not just going to give it to you. You got to pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens in our world. Like, we're not going to get together and work on stuff together. Like, we're like, close the door, go in my office, and do my own little deal. You know what I mean? It's a struggle for me. Am I sharing the knowledge, the understanding, the things that God has given me, even about this, or about church, or about ministry, like all those things? Will we share knowledge, information, home, cars, things, possessions? Are we sharing? Am I sharing what I have? Here's a big one. Am I willing to live without the recognition? Am I willing to live without the recognition? Right? The Pharisees wanted the best seats. They wanted everyone to see that they were given 10%, the spice, the mint, the dill, the herb. Like, hey, I'm giving my thing. And you've been in those conversations, right? Where they're like, well, we gave $40,000 to the Red Cross for Katrina. And you're like, you're not generous. You're just greedy for man's applause now. You're just greedy for my recognition, to recognize you as some generous bigwig that can afford it. And it's like, are you willing to live without the recognition? If the only people that ever know that you gave anything were you and God and the person that received it, was that fine with you? Or do you find yourself like ways of like sharing stories or prayer requests, right? Like, come on, we do this. Like, my prayer request, like, all right, so that people know that you're generous. So people know how much you gave. Like, you kind of just sneak it in there. Like, am I willing to live without the recognition? Fly under the radar. Don't brag about it. All those things. Number 4, am I giving consistently? Am I giving consistently? Am I just throwing money and stuff at people when it's convenient, when it doesn't really hurt? Or am I willing to do it over the long haul, through the tough times, through the good times, through the ups and through the downs? Am I doing it consistently? My time and my talents and my money, am I giving consistently? Not just when I feel the urge to be generous, but consistently. Here's one. Am I giving my best or my leftovers? Right? Am I giving my best or my leftovers? In a very real way, I sit down in my house with my checkbook in front of me, and the first thing I do is I write a check, whatever I'm going to tithe or give. Because I know that by the time I get done paying for all this stuff, I'm going to be stuck with a number, and I'm going to be like, well, I guess God gets what's left. So in a very real, practical way, do that. Write the check first. Write the check first. And personally, like, what personally kind of bugs me is like, and I don't know, just take it for it's my feeling, okay? It's like when we give to God what we don't even want, right? Like, we'll just give the clothes to the food, to the clothing pantry, or we'll just give the food to the thing. Because you know what? I'm not going to really eat it. I'm not going to really use it. It's all stained and broken toys, and like, I don't want that anyway. So instead of throwing it in the garbage, we give it to God sometimes. And I'm like, what's the sacrifice there? Like, what are we saying when we just give our junk and give our leftovers to God? That's just personally something God convicted me on. Like, what's the sacrifice? Am I giving my best or am I giving my leftovers? Because we are called to sacrifice as Christians. Okay, number 6. Am I willing to give no matter what I am getting? The reality is, you can be a very greedy poor person. You can be a very greedy poor person. Right? No matter what you're giving, are you willing to give something? And I understand if you're jobless and you have tough times financially and stuff like that, but the reality is, you can give something. Are you willing to give no matter what you are getting? Are you willing to give no matter what you are getting? See, because here's the lie. The lie that Satan wants you to believe when life is out of control and there's no money left and all this other stuff is this, that you can't afford to give. You can't afford it. Stop giving and get ahead. Like, if I just didn't give this, I could pay for all these other things. Like, if I just didn't give X, Y, or Z, if I just didn't give this amount of money, if I just decrease it by this amount, like all this other stuff, right? And when Satan's like, why? Like, you can pay for all this. Just don't give. Like, stop giving. Here's the truth. That's the lie. Here's the truth. You will never get ahead by giving less. You will never get ahead by giving less. Absolutely 100% true. Never will you get ahead by giving less. All right, you may be able to pay for those bills and all this other stuff, but I've found personally that when I am faithful, like, I'm fine. God provides. God fills in the gaps. God's able to come alongside and show the way and what I should be doing or how I should be spending this or that or the other. Right? You will never get ahead by giving less. But that's not what Satan wants you to believe. That's not what the world wants you to believe. It's like, this check, like, you are really going to write that much money in a check to the church, to somebody else, to a missionary, all this other stuff? Just keep it. You can totally cover all your expenses. Just keep the money. You'll never get ahead by giving less. Get clear on who you will give to. Will it be to God and others, or will it be to me, myself, and I? Will you keep it all for yourself like the man in the parable? Verse 20 and 21. All right, I will have plenty. I will store it all up for myself. I'll eat, sleep, drink, be merry. I'm going to have a great time. And then God speaks in verse 20. He says, "But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with those who store up things for themselves, but are not rich or not generous towards God.'" All right, get clear on who you are. And here, I think, wrapped up in here is the biblical principle. I think that can change. The whole thing can change. But this, if we can wrap our finances, if we can wrap our minds, if we can wrap our lives around what I'm about to say, I think that the whole out of control thing gets a lot clearer for us, for everyone in this room. All right? Here's who you are. I am a steward, not an owner. I am a steward, not an owner. Jesus says, "You fool, you can't take any of that stuff with you. You will go to be with the Lord tonight. He will call you to the judgment seat. You will stand in front of Him, and none of this stuff that you've been chasing, all of the possessions, the abundance of possessions that you have, none of it you can take. None of it you can be like, God, I don't know why I should get into heaven, but here's a piece of chocolate cake from Portillo's." Like, you can't do that. You can't bring anything, none of it, you can't bring anything with you. And God says, "You fool, you stored up everything for yourself on earth, and you stand before me now with nothing. You wasted all because you did not invest properly." Here's what a steward is. Ready? A steward realizes that what they have isn't theirs. They are investing somebody else's goods. A steward realizes that what they have isn't theirs. They are investing someone else's goods. A steward realizes that they will be held accountable for their actions. The owner will return, and a day of accountability is coming for all. A steward realizes that they will be held accountable for their actions. And a steward realizes that possessions are a means to an end, not the end means. The point of life isn't the house, the car, the kids, the wife, the job, the promotion, the money, the checkbook, the bank account, the boat, the lake house, the retirement account, the 401k. That's not the point of life, right? That's not the purpose of life, an abundance of possessions. But all of them have been given to you, and like whatever you have has been given to you so that you can be a steward of it, so that you can use them to help everyday people become passionate followers of Jesus Christ. Because a steward realizes that his possessions are tools, not treasures. They are tools to be used for a purpose. They are not treasures to be kept and hoarded to oneself. Right? They're to be opened, not closed. They're to be used, not buried. They're to be spent, not hoarded. They're to be shared, not stored. They're to be invested for the kingdom, not saved for yourself. And the moment that they become treasures is the moment that we have switched from stewardship to ownership. The moment that it's like, that's my stuff. I got to get more stuff. I want more things.